Hey guys, my name is Donnie and welcome to the 4th episode of building a motorhome from scratch. And when I mean scratch, I mean from the bottom up. So in the first episode, what I did was I took the old cab off and just stripped the whole chassis down completely. And in the second episode, I started making a frame, and then in the third episode, I made what's going to become the cab area out of some thick gauge aluminium. And this episode's gonna be a big one because I am planning on getting this motorhome to start and to drive. So let me show you what I plan on doing. Okay guys, so like I said in this video, I plan on getting this motorhome to run and drive. And that's gonna be a tall order because obviously there is nothing installed at the moment, but there's only one way to eat an elephant, and that is one bite at a time. So basically I need to install everything that you see in front of you at the moment. That is now the dashboard assembly, the pedal boxes, steering wheel, some the gear lever, the brake boosters, hoses and pipes, steering, the seats, a boatload of wiring and everything to get this motorhome to run and drive. Now guys, the fact that I have now moved the seating position forward by about 600 millimeters or 2 feet means that some of the wiring and the hosing and stuff like that will need to be extended forward for this whole thing to work. And I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue because just extending wiring and piping and so on is not a big problem. But the one thing that's been keeping me up at night is the steering wheel, because guys, the steering wheel used to, when it was sitting further back like this, go straight down to the rack and pinion and connect with a rod from the steering wheel to the rack and pinion. And now everything has moved forward 600 millimeters. So getting that steering assembly to work and to fit in the new position is gonna be a huge headache. And I think that I should start with that issue and resolving it before I do anything else to make sure that I've got a steering wheel that functions correctly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this dashboard assembly, because the steering column bolts onto this dashboard assembly onto the frame right now, and then we can check in the front exactly how I want to, or how I plan on routing that steering column extension. Okay guys, so it's time for an update, and it's not a very positive one. I've now installed this dashboard's skeleton, and I've installed the steering column, and I also went ahead and I installed the pedal box there at the bottom. And the reason for that is because I needed to know where the steering shaft was going to go down underneath the vehicle without it interfering with the clutch and the brake and so on. And I've used this piece of dowel just to decide on the angle at which it's going to go down underneath the vehicle. This is what the old steering shaft looked like, and I thought that I would just extend it because the rack and pinion now is laying more or less over here, and the whole steering system has now moved forward about 600 millimeters or 2 feet. So I just thought I would extend it all the way to the back, and that would be my solution. But the problem is, guys, that the angle at which these universal joints at the bottom would have to be at to get to the rack and pinion is way too much. And I will show you at the bottom what my problem is. So if you look at the bottom, this X represents where the dowel stick would come out, or where my steering shaft would come out, and then using this little extender, it'll have to move all the way to the back, and that there is where my rack and pinions shaft comes out. And guys, you can probably see that that rack and pinions shaft is moving backwards instead of forwards. And secondly, the angle at which the universal joint would be is way more than 40 degrees. So I will not be able to simply install or extend the steering shaft and then connect it to the steering at the then connect it to the rack and pinion at the back. I'm gonna have to come up with a very ingenious solution, and at the moment, guys, I seriously do not have an answer. So I'm going to put this one on ice, but the show must go on. So what I'm going to start doing now is working on connecting the rest of everything that needs to be installed to this cab to get it started. Like for instance, the brake lines, the clutch lines, the wiring harness, and so on, and maybe also the seats. And then at a later stage I will figure out how I'm going to be connecting the steering wheel, because that is a huge headache. Any case, let's continue. Okay guys, time for an update once again. I've now finished installing the seats, and I have finished installing the dashboard and everything that goes onto it, and I found a spot where I'm going to put the parking brake and so on. And I've started the mammoth task of doing all of the wiring and extending all of the wiring and making sure that everything is connected and fit where it needs to be, and also fitting and installing stuff like the fuel filter, and getting a spot where the water reservoir is going to go, and a spot to install a battery and so on. And I'm busy working with all of that. And what I've also gone ahead and done is I've taken off the radiator and the AC condenser that got smashed by the accident, and I've ordered some new stuff, including a new slave cylinder for the clutch. And now that I've installed everything where it needs to go, I was also able to measure what length of cables I'm going to need for the gear lever and the parking brake and so on, and I've ordered that. And as soon as that is here, I can install all of those things. And as I was installing all of this stuff and working on this vehicle, the thought never left my mind of what I need to do to get this steering connected to the steering rack there at the bottom. And guys, I think I might have come up with a plan. But guys, trying to explain laying underneath the vehicle what needs to happen might be a little bit difficult. So I'm gonna rather try and draw a picture of what's going on here with the steering, and maybe you guys can understand what my plan is on how I'm gonna fix this. So guys, if I draw a rudimentary picture, I'll be able to explain to you guys exactly what my plan is on fixing this issue. Say this is the motorhome's front wheel and this is the front of the motorhome. Currently the steering wheel is positioned forwards of the front wheel, and the steering shaft via universal joint goes down through the cab and under the cab. Now the thing is that I need to connect that steering extension with the steering rack that is here by the front wheel. Now the rack's input shaft at the moment is positioned in a rearwards direction because that whole steering wheel used to be here at the back and it was just connected straight into the steering rack without any issues. Now I cannot simply extend a steering shaft from that universal joint to the steering rack here at the back, because obviously no universal joints will be able to accommodate that 90-degree angle at which it's going to have to go into the steering rack here at the bottom. Now what I think I'm going to try and do is I'm going to take this steering rack and reposition it by rotating this steering input by 90 degrees so that it will move forwards and be in a forward direction, and then I'll be able to connect this steering shaft and the angle will be less than 40 degrees. In actual fact, it's only going to be something like 20 degrees, which should be perfect. Obviously my scale is a little bit out, but that is my idea. Now guys, it's not so simple as to just loosen or taking this steering rack out and moving it 90 degrees, because there are stuff in the way like engine mounts and the high pressure pipes, because this is a power steering system. But I think that with a little bit of tweaking and adjustment, I'll be able to pull this off. So I'm going to attempt to do that, and if I'm successful, I'll show you guys exactly what I've done. So let's get going. Hey guys, so there we go. I was able to connect the steering wheel with the wheels, and guys, that is making a long story short, because this really had me busy getting the angles of the steering shaft the way that I wanted it so that it wouldn't bind. And also here at the bottom I was struggling so badly to try and move that steering rack or turn it 90 degrees that I wanted so that it would go underneath that engine mount over there. And at the end of the day I was not able to do that because I was going to have to lower the steering rack by a couple of millimeters, which would have then altered the whole steering dynamics here on the side and causing stuff like bump steer and so on. So that was not an option anymore. But I was able to move that input shaft 45 degrees forwards about by just installing a couple of spacers there at the back. But this whole steering rack is still connected to the original mounting spots, and it's nice and tight and secure. And at the end of the day, basically I only needed to extend this steering shaft from its original 200 millimeters to about 600 millimeters, but it is connected now and everything is looking well. And guys, the angles of these universal joints was very critical, because I am at an absolute maximum of what the angles allowance is. Usually they say it's about 35 degrees maximum angle, and I think I'm just about at 35 degrees, if not a little bit over. But at least there's no binding and the steering is working very, very nicely and smoothly, and I'm very happy that this part of the build is now finished, because it was keeping me up at night. So now guys, I can continue working on installing the rest of the list of things that I need to get this thing running, like for instance finishing up all of the wiring and the cabling and the piping and so on. And let's see if I can get this vehicle started pretty soon. Hey guys, there we go. Sorry about the lighting, but there's some sunshine shining through at the moment. But I think I've installed everything so that I can at least take this motorhome for a drive now, see whether my steering and the brakes and the radiator and everything and the wiring and so on works the way that it is intended to. I've not finalized the position for the battery yet, but I'll do that as soon as or when I start finishing off the front, so that I would know where the lights and everything goes, because I think the lights and the battery is probably going to clash. But apart from that, all that remains now is to get it started, and then we can take it for a ride. Door open. What door? So guys, there we go. Once again, I was successful at doing a thing. The bus is driving, even though it doesn't look like much yet. This is a massive accomplishment in my mind, because now that I know that it is drivable and it changes gears and everything. So guys, as you probably noticed, there was some rattles and so on, and it was a little bit noisy, but apart from that, I'm very happy with how it drives. Obviously I haven't installed the rubber mountings yet to separate the chassis from the body, and obviously because it is open, it is very noisy. But guys, this has been a heck of a marathon once again, and I probably could have made multiple videos of everything that I did, like the steering and installing the seats and so on, but I decided to make one long video because this is a milestone that I really wanted to achieve before I can continue with the rest of the work. From here on out, it is less mechanical and more fun. Like for instance, I think I'm gonna continue with the front of the vehicle, doing the electric windows and installing a nice massive windscreen and the lights in the front and so on, and do a design how I want the front to look like. And then we can continue to the rear and start working on the actual motorhome itself and the slide outs and so on, which is gonna be fun. But guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I'm gonna love you and leave you. I need a cup of coffee, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers!